Okay, boys, let's do one question for every Eastern Conference team. As always with these, I try not to repeat myself too much from other things I've said in the offseason. Tough to avoid, but I do my best. We're going to start with Philly. My question's going to be Embiid's passing, and it feels like I've done this one before. So I'm not going to act like I got a photographic memory of Philly's whole season, especially because Embiid played 39 games plus one round of the playoffs, but he did get up to about 5.5 assists a game, and I do remember times where he would bring in the ball up court a lot, or just allowed to make decisions on the wing or on the top of the key a lot, and of course handoff actions in Nick Nurse's offense for Embiid and Maxey, or you can look at it with PG now, all that's going to write itself, but also just the idea of getting as much cutting action as you can around that for Caleb Martin or Kyle Lowry when he's in the game, or Oubre, and then of course you've got just the balance of when Embiid has the ball in the post, how often are we getting really quick skip passes, etc., versus him getting overwhelmed and then committing turnovers and stuff. I mean, for this previous season, Embiid, again, 5.5 assists. He was a touch below 4 turnovers per game, which, yeah, you'd like that number to be lower, but it's not as bad as it might sound because of how often he had the ball. His turnover percentage was about 12%, which is more like a normal number. And that type of thing will really matter against the Celtics if they see each other in the playoffs because, as we all know, the Celtics, they get very creative with how they guard Embiid between different guys guarding him on different possessions, and sometimes it's single coverage, sometimes it's a hard double. And the Knicks got into some of that as well. One of those games he had 9 turnovers. Next, we're going to go to Cleveland, and I'll just go with Kenny Atkinson's influence on this team, especially on the offense. I think the most noticeable thing right away is that in the Brooklyn days, before they got Kyrie and KD, the Nets had about a top 10 pace. Cleveland has been a very slow team for 2 years now, especially 2 years ago when they were healthy the whole year. They had the slowest pace in the league. So you might just speed them up a bit. Besides that, I just want to see how much extra movement, how many extra handoff actions do we see in this offense, whether it's Garland or Mitchell getting a little more off ball, Mobley or Allen being used as hubs a little more often on the free throw line, the wing, whatever. I mean, of course, the dude coached Joe Harris, so he knows how to draw an off-ball set for a shooter. And it's kind of funny, last year I remember at the beginning of the season saying that all of last season was dedicated to Cleveland figuring out its offense, and then they had a bunch of injuries, they never really had the opportunity to do it, and now I'm basically saying the same thing again. And yes, obviously Mobley becoming a three-point shooter would help this, we'll just have to see. Now let's go to the Bulls. My question is just Buzelis and his place on this team right now, because there's a lot of things to talk about with the Bulls, even if it's going to culminate in them just being not good. Yeah, I mean, between Levine trade rumor stuff and Giddey and Kobe White and Ayo, who was scoring last year, and all that's cool. I'm just hoping that Buzelis doesn't just sit in the corner watching it all happen, because that dude wants to attack the basket, and that dude is, by all accounts, pretty damn confident in himself. And sure, of course, he's going to have to prove that the 3 ball is there. There's been some back and forth on if it will be, but he's got to be featured in stuff, man. You got to give him at least a couple of pick and roll actions per game. You got to let him catch the ball on the move to get downhill. Get him in DHO actions and all that. He can't just be a guy out there. Also kind of want to see him out there defensively with Patrick Williams. Speaking of defense, we're going to go to the Pacers next. I would like to see the lineup that they eventually committed to, which was Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, Nembhard, and Nesmith, just for a larger sample size, because the sample size we did get of it, their defense was really good. I mean, regular season they had a 107 defensive rating. And in the playoffs, it was 114, which is still average, which is still better than what they ended up with last season. Because remember in the beginning of the year, they were all offense and the defense was really a problem. I mean, that was so strong that they finished 24th in defensive rating, right? And the framework is there. Miles Turner, if you want to care about this, his rim protection numbers are slightly worse than they were years ago, right? Things like opponent field goal percentage at the rim when he's the closest defender, all that stuff. That being said, I think he's still good, and I think he can still be the center of a good defense. Siakam is still just a big wing who's sturdy, and he might not be as athletic as he was in his early days, but he can still move. You got the on-ball defenders in Nesmith and Nembhard. Nesmith plays hard as hell and is afraid of nobody, no matter how much bigger than him they might be. Nembhard, when he's not guarding Brunson, is an effective one-on-one defender. And then all Halliburton really needs to do is just get out of the action, get around a screen when teams are trying to target him. And then after that, you're looking at, just Jarris Walker get more minutes this year, because that was the big thing with him coming into the NBA out of college, was his versatility as a defender. So yeah, Pacers defense. Let's talk Magic. My questions are about Jonathan Isaac. I know that you can go to the shooting, you can go to Will Franz's 3-ball comeback. I want to see if Jonathan Isaac can have another leap in minutes this year, because we all know on a per-minute basis, Isaac was one of the best defensive players in the league this past season. If you look at per 100 possession stats, last year Isaac, he was at nearly 4 blocks and 2 steals a game, and among guys who actually played, that would put him 5th in blocks per 100 possession on the season. But as we all know, he did not play for basically 3 years. I mean, he played 11 games 2 seasons ago, but he pretty much didn't play for 3 years. And offensively, I mean, you got to show us something. Higher three-point rate would be a big one. Last year, he played 291 minutes in 45 games with Paolo. That's really the big question. Can he play heavy minutes with Paolo? Is it not a problem for your offense? Because if so, you're definitely cooking. And I suppose some of this comes down to, Wendell and his health and everything as well. But yeah, Jonathan Isaac. Now we go to the Knicks, a team that I'm very high on going into the season. And there are some valid questions between, if Mitch gets hurt, the center position, and also like how Randall fits into the new Knicks, if you will. And maybe my question is a byproduct of that one, but mine really is like, in clutch situations, are they still going to need Jalen Brunson to be Superman? Like, you're still going to need Brunson to make difficult shots, create stuff for other guys, all that. But against the best teams in the East, like, how much can this team withstand Jalen Brunson just being regular or having an off game? If there was a team that is equipped to play around a star player like Brunson, it's this Knicks team, right? Between the offensive rebounding of Josh Hart and Mitch, if he's healthy, you've got the shooting with damn near the whole team, especially DiVincenzo and McHale and OG. And all those guys can dribble, and Josh Hart screens for Brunson. There are some lineup questions on how this all works out in clutch situations, too. And of course, you got Randall and his tough shot making. Like, the pieces are all there for it to work. I'm just wondering if I'm watching a Knicks game in, like, February against the Sixers or whatever, and it's, like, the last 3 minutes, and it's like, oh, it's still pretty much Jalen Brunson or bust in these situations. And also, McHale has proven that he can handle more ball handling. Yeah, you don't want it to number one option status like it was with the Nets, but, it's the ideal spot for him here. Now for the Raptors, we're going to Grady Dick. I don't know if he's going to start or not, but I assume he's going to play a lot. And as the year went on last season, you started to see more of the shades of Grady's potential, which is much more than just a let me stand here and take catch and shoots. Like, yeah, he could do that, but you're talking about actions where he's running across like multiple screens to catch the ball on the move, and whether that's like for a three off of an inbound or perhaps taking like a two-pointer with a big waiting for him, or maybe like the Raptors are running handoff action with him and like quickly or something, and then the second Grady gets the ball, he's just immediately going up with it. There were also the occasional like pull-up twos off a screen action sprinkled in there for him as well. Some contested threes in there for him as well, sometimes where he uses a Kelly Olynyk pin down and damn near hugs him to get around him, but it works. Yeah, the question is just like, what does Grady Dick's second season look like? The signs are there that he can be an awesome shooter and then use the threat of that jump shot to get more stuff for himself. Also, his pump fake could be pretty money. Next, we're going to go to the Bucks, and I've done enough serious Bucks discourse this offseason between the Giannis Dame two-man game, the health of the team, how good's the defense going to be. So I'm going to go in a different direction here, and one that I wouldn't typically do, which is I just kind of wonder where the discussion around Giannis is going to go this year, in the sense of, a few years ago he was the consensus best guy in the league, and then Jokic took that spot over. I would say the consensus now is that it's a debate between Luka or Giannis for number two. And then you've had a couple of just unfortunate playoff things where Giannis just wasn't able to play this previous season at all. And then against Miami, he misses the first couple games. He was dealing with an injury. He has 38 and 20 in the last game, but he also missed a bunch of free throws. As they get upset, then you have like this offseason where there's like an anonymous player poll where Giannis gets like 2% of the vote on guy you'd want to start your franchise with. Charles Barkley goes on the Bill Simmons pod, and the only thing he had to say about the Bucks in that whole thing was just about Giannis has to get better. And that's after he had a season where he shot 60% from the field on 30 points per game. And to me, there's many conversations to have about the Bucks before you get to Giannis when trying to figure out how good they'll be this year. I mean, he was fourth in MVP voting last year, and I think that was mostly due to the Bucks disappointing a bit. And while all this happened, he just had his most efficient regular season. So pretty much to me, the question is just like, what's going on here with the Giannis opinions? Let us not forget, two-time MVP, Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Anyway, let's go to the Wizards. I don't know. Let's go with Bub Carrington. I mean, Brogdon is on the team. I know that it seems like he never comes up when we talk about the Wizards, but he's on the team. And, Poole's going to have some ball handling reps as well. And so just how many opportunities does Bub Carrington really get to just operate on screens? And also, the three ball was looking good in Summer League, but he's going to have to prove it over a longer stretch. What does his finishing look like? Now for the NBA champion Boston Celtics. I'm choosing to not have this question be related to Porzingis' health because, I don't know, I'm weird. My question will be, will anybody on this team get a Sixth Man of the Year vote? I wish it was Horford, but he's probably going to end up starting too many games. And also, for as much as I love him, I have to admit that over a whole regular season, Al will usually have this 15-game stretch where he looks really old, and then he does something, and then suddenly he looks 6 years younger. So maybe it won't be him. Maybe it could be Pritchard. Maybe it would be Hauser. And if NBA players finally realize that going at Hauser is actually not that easy in 1v1s, granted, there's not a lot of guys to go at on this team, so maybe you'll just still do it anyway. Maybe Tillman will get some votes. I don't know. Now let's go to the Nets. What does Noah Clowney's development look like? I would say that there is a healthy amount of optimism among Nets fans for Noah Clowney. Very young, just turned 20, didn't get consistent minutes until the tail end of this previous season. And the gist with him is he's a big wing, like 6'10", 7'2" wingspan, and he's already shown some real stuff as like a switch defender, a help defender. Offensively, his three ball, while the volume hasn't been super high so far, when you actually look at the attempts he's had, they're pretty clean, like just how smoothly he goes up with it. The percentages have been good so far, and defensively, like him and Claxton together were already good. Very, very small sample size of 92 minutes, but they had a 106 defensive rating. So yeah, Clowney's got a lot of potential. And yes, he had a 7-block game as well as a 4-block game. Now we go to the Pistons. I've done my Cade, Ivy, Duran, and Asar spiels this offseason, so I'm just going to focus on the three-point shooting. We all know they got Tobias, they got Hardaway, they got Malik Beasley, they got Fontecchio coming back. You can hope for a three-point jump from Ivy and Asar around Cade. Just to give you some numbers, last year the Pistons, they were tied for last in three-pointers made. They were 27th in three-pointers attempted, and they were 26th in three-point percentage. So the question is, will there be a noticeable increase in all of those numbers? There better be. We go to the Hornets. We're not doing the LaMelo Mark Williams health thing. We're talking about Brandon Miller. As a quick refresher, I looked at a bunch of his shot attempts the last few games of this previous season, and by the end there, he was taking almost any shot you can imagine, whether it's catching shoots, catching drives, handoffs, where he was like rising up with it pretty quick, pull-ups off of screen actions. The free throws were also trending upwards a little bit as well. Some ghost screens sprinkled in there, as well as like some actions where he gets a down screen coming out of the corner. NBA.com had him at 5 pick and rolls per game last season, and they're very strict with that number, which means it really was more than that. So I guess honestly what it is just what does it look like in year 2? There's already signs that he could be a mid-range god. He was nearly 50% of mid-range jumpers this year. Of course, the three-point numbers are good. Sure, he does need to get a little stronger. He does need to tighten up the handle some, but those are very normal things you have to improve on after your rookie season. I mean, he proved he can get buckets, right? And of course, like if LaMelo's healthy, then it could be like a little more catch and shoots as opposed to like Miller having to initiate. But even then, there's going to be a balance where it's not just going to be LaMelo screen action, throw it to Miller in the corner. Like Miller, you got to run offense through him as well. He's too good for you not to. Okay, I think we have like a few more. We have for Miami, probably Nikola Jovic. And the reason I'm choosing Jovic over Jaquez, if you were going to go with a young player in Miami, is because I'm more confident in what Jaquez is. Whereas with Jovic, I know what the dream is for Jovic. He's this 6'10", I saw him listed at 6'11" somewhere else, but he's tall. This tall wing who can take and make a lot of threes, but also put the ball on the floor, and I do think his potential as a passer at that spot is like pretty decently high. Some of his swing passes look really good, going through some of his assists, like he's had some really nice entry passes to Bam. He likes to push it in transition when he gets a rebound. Just seems like a really tall wing who can do a lot of stuff on offense and make a lot of threes. So that type of guy next to Bam sounds really good. And I mean, he played a lot with Bam this previous season, the majority of his minutes. And now we have the Hawks. It's really just, do I want to ask the jump that Jalen Johnson will take in the next year, or is it the defense? I think I'll still take the defense. I know that I've emphasized this before, so I guess I'm breaking my rule. 27th in defensive rating this past year. You got to get better than that. I mean, we'll see what Reese Shea can do right away. Obviously, he's a big wing. Jalen Johnson, another big wing. They're hoping Dyson Daniels could be the on-ball defender, but teams are just not going to guard him on the other end. Last year, they gave up a whole bunch of corner threes and shots at the rim, which is just a disaster for trying to have a good defense. I remember early in the season, I was like, oh, wow, the Hawks bigs are like really high up on screen actions and everything. And I don't know. You got Capella back there. You got a Kongwu. You got Hunter and Larry Nance. I don't know.